This session is organized by this team. So you have already heard the co-moderator Sophie Urmitzer in the back, and there is Jan Lask trying to capture all results and also helping. He's also the pillar for the technical support here, and then later you will also meet Evelyn Raimund, who will operate the Miro tool on which we will work. On the next slide, we will see, it always takes a little bit of time. You see how our session is organized. So we are now in the introduction, and then we will have 3 impulse presentations, and we will then discuss these impulse presentations before we are going into a fishbowl discussion, where we will then collect all comments and questions, but also ideas from the participants, and then we will summarize together the group results. Hopefully manage to have some report that we can give also later, or that we can use to report about this workshop. On the next slide, you can see what are the chances for interaction in this workshop. There are 2 ways how we will interact, and you will have the chance to either write your comments into the chat, and this will be relevant during or after the input presentations, which we will then mainly discuss via chat questions and comments. And then in the second part of this workshop, you will be asked to write your contributions on the Miro board with stickers, this whiteboard. How this will work, Evelyn will explain later. Next slide, please. Yeah, these are our 3 speakers. I will introduce them one by one later, so we can go ahead on the next slide. And just to shortly recap, why are we talking about system change? Here our premise is that bioeconomy must contribute to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and however, we have to acknowledge that sustainability challenges are just the symptoms of very complex and intertwined problems, so-called wicked problems, and therefore bioeconomy must entail a dynamic and complex societal transformation process, and we thus need someone to address the contemporary problems by effecting fundamental changes in the current societal and economic system. And today we would like to talk about how this system changer can be educated. Next slide, Jan. And with this in mind, we now want to explore ways of designing or improving the tertiary bioeconomy education. And what does our plea for more transformative knowledge imply practically? More concretely, we will dive into the 2 questions now on the slide. The first question will be what kind of knowledge and skills will be required to affect a system change, and the other one will be how we can integrate these skills in bioeconomy curricula. And these 2 questions will later appear on the Miro board, and you can work on them. With this, I would like to move into our input presentation session, and the first speaker will be Professor Arnim Wiek. Professor Arnim Wiek. He is a professor in the School of Sustainability and a senior sustainability scientist with the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation at Arizona State University. And I see the slide already on, and the word is yours, Armin.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you properly.
Good. Excellent. Yeah, so I want to give a short input. I try to make it a little bit provocative so that it's a little bit more interesting. Obviously, there would be a lot to be said in addition to what I can capture here in a few minutes. So I'm glad that we have the opportunity afterwards to discuss and exchange. So I want to push it, and the subtitle is really here about beyond education as usual. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. I'm not a bioeconomy expert per se. I have worked on food economy issues for several years, but I've been researching sustainability education since a decade and more. And these are some of the insights I have gained at this point. I feel there is still a lot of business as usual going on in the bioeconomy, even under the label of sustainable bioeconomy. And there are 4 areas I want to suggest that this is the case. There's still a strong focus on selling new products, and biocomposites for cars, for instance, is one of the big components that I've come across, which is a great example of we're looking for just basically the old mass production going in the same direction of what we have done in the past, just with a little bit of tweak and labeling this somewhat sustainable. There are incremental improvements of operations, not really transformational ones. Energy efficiency, for instance, of biotech productions, trying to reduce energy as the only component or one of the key components. There's nothing wrong with this, but it's not really getting us to where we need to go. There is in most of the bioeconomy a very conventional idea of corporate models, profit maximization, and standard business models dominate. And there is a continuation of conventional business ecosystems, especially when you look into banking and financing. You still have multinationals and large banking corporations that guide us there. The next one, please. So I feel that is very much aligned with the idea of business as usual in bioeconomy education, and there are 3 areas. So the dominance of these conventional topics is something that I've seen in a good share of educational offerings. In addition to this, there is a dominance of classroom-based pedagogies. We still adhere largely to the idea of that this is the most conducive pedagogy we have. And in particular, very, very few assessments are being made where the students actually acquire the skills we set forth. And next one, please. So that should all be quite different, right? So transformational bioeconomy topics would approach this very differently. They would look on not so much selling products, but really generating new values. Really the idea of reusable as opposed to kind of the one-way streams is one identifying idea there. Significant improvements of operations, not incremental ones, right? Really moving hard on the renewable energy production and not in the ranges of single digits, but rather, large scale, 90, 100%. And some companies have very nicely demonstrated this. But even more fundamental is the idea of adopting transformational corporate models. So benefit corporations, cooperative businesses, social enterprises. We have a variety of newly or also quite old, but definitely innovative ideas there that support far more sustainability and justice issues than the conventional models. And then finally, the creation of a public value business ecosystem. The idea is very much going into the investment side with a very different mindset. Social banking, localizing investments, and so forth. The next one, please. My research team got somewhat famous for a concept we published about 10 years ago, where we moved from topical focus in education to more competencies-based, and we proposed 4 competencies as key ideas for all sustainability professionals to acquire: systems thinking, futures thinking, values thinking, and strategic thinking, and using those for implementation of sustainability ideas and solutions. I don't want to go too much into the details. All of this can be easily being read in some of the publications. The next one, please. So I want to close with really 2 ideas here. So I spoke mostly now on the what, right? What should be the content of the education for system changers? but the how is equally important, right? And so I'm a strong advocate for going beyond classroom-based education, so mostly focusing on project-based bioeconomy education, learning directly from sustainable pioneers. We have done a lot of strong work there in this direction. Happy to share this with you at a later stage. But even more so, it's important to allow not just direct learning, but also reflecting, assessing, and transferring solutions worldwide. We have done this in so-called solutions studios and mobile solution studios in various parts of the areas I worked in. And then finally, the idea of working in teams and with stakeholders and experts as again, a very strong, important element of a more project-based and engaged and student-centered pedagogy. I want to close with the next one, please. I want to close with an idea we kind of piloted last year, which is how to assess students' competence acquisition in vivo. So instead of sitting them down and letting them fill in multiple choice tests or letting them write a couple of essays, how can you actually simulate bioeconomy practice and create examines directly with practitioners as co-examiners? And finally, the idea is really not so much what we often do, kind of ex post assessments at the end of a course or program, but really in a formative way of using assessment, student skills assessments as a continuous learning tool. So that's what I have to offer here. On the last slide, I shared a couple of things we published there lately on the next one, please. We published, and I'm happy to share those if you're interested in learning more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arnim. This was a very concrete and rich insight into how sustainability, but also bioeconomy education could practically work. Is there anybody, I think I would like to give the chance now, if anybody has a direct question to your input presentation, to ask this question now. I don't see a question in the chat, but maybe there's somebody in the audience who would like to have a direct question or comment. No, that does not seem the case, but I think it was also very clear what you presented, and I think it will also be good to capture this later on our mirror board discussion on the question, what do system changes need? So thank you again, Arnim, and then I think we go ahead with the next input presentation, which will be provided by my EBU, European Bioeconomy University colleague, Professor Davide Viaggi, who is a full professor at the department.
Sorry, Iris, I think there are a couple of questions.
There are a couple of questions now. Sorry. Oh, now I see them coming in. Okay, sorry then, Davide. I will stop this for a moment, and I think we should indeed take some couple of minutes to discuss the questions that come in now directly.
Okay, I can take them. If that's okay.
You can take them directly, yes, please.
So Maurizio, the question about how to apply this to economists as well, I couldn't agree more. In fact, I'm trying to penetrate our business school and our school for economics since about 10 years. It's just very hard because, the traditional models prevail so much. It's usually very large classes, and then at the same time, you have the kind of three dominant paradigms: a little bit of life cycle assessment, a little bit of corporate social responsibility, and then a little bit of kind of what investment companies there do. Usually, investing in social funds about less than 1% of their overall assets. So it's all very incremental. It could totally be applied to economists, but you would need to start really engaging with a different economy and business reality that is emerging, right? Cooperative business developments, the whole idea of public value oriented economies, the idea of post-growth economies, there is so much potential in there on the what, the skill side, as well as the pedagogy side. The other question, I think, from Gendiai. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously a big one.
Yes.
I don't feel, I mean, that again, I'm just continuing probably to provoke a little bit. I think the idea of saying, oh yeah, let's just reform capitalism. It will all, you know, work out. Let's just reform. Well, first, you know, we're trying, if not since, you know, centuries, definitely since several decades. And I feel the very idea, what I want to offer here is, I think globalization can work when it's focusing on the right things. I think it's just nonsense, and it doesn't work to globalize trade in terms of moving products around the world, but knowledge. You know, let's globalize, you know, knowledge. Let's globalize our, you know, collaborations, and let's globalize the way we're tackling issues around the world. So I feel when I think about, you know, how we could advance the idea of globalization in a kind of peaceful society, that's the way to go. But at the same time, we're still so obsessed to, you know, access mass consumption and mass markets, that I feel, you know, that there needs to be significant transformation and significant reform. And it all starts in the schools, right? It never starts in, you know, politics or business practices directly. It all starts in education, right? We need to, you know, teach things very differently. A great example is, I mean, we are, Arizona State University is the largest public university in the United States. It's ranked as the #1 innovative university in the world. And then look at, you know, what we teach. We have 3,000 business graduates, right? And they can't even spell cooperative. They don't know, you know, what kind of really significant engagement with sustainability, what that actually means. So it's just hard to get to this, you know, core, how to educate very differently and where to educate. We have good ideas, but it's not easy to penetrate the institutions.
Yeah, but I think you showed nicely that really a different way of education also will probably hopefully help that that way. I wonder if how this different way of education can work in these times. This is quite difficult. As at many places, I think, of the world, we are switching to digital education now, which I find an interesting exercise. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Now I'll wait one more minute. Is there any other question to Armin, or otherwise, I mean, we will have the floor later also for going ahead with discussion. And then thanks a lot, Armin, again. And I think we can now then move to the next input presentation, which comes from my colleague in the of the European Bioeconomy University, which is Professor Davide Viaggi. He's a full professor at the Department of Agriculture and Food Science at the University of Bologna in Italy. And yeah, Davide, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. And can you hear me properly, let's say?
Yes, we can hear you properly.
So thank you very much for the invitation to this workshop. And well, I should say that after the first presentation and the questions and discussion, I would be very tempted to go on with this discussion and enter into the topic. But I will try first to stick to my presentation and then maybe later on in the discussion. So you can move to the next. Okay, so first of all, some recap of some of the experiences I have in my background. I'm agronomist by training first, then I had a PhD in agricultural economics and policy. And working on agriculture, environmental economics and policy over here, I got in touch with the bioeconomy topic. And actually now I'm working to some extent on direct bioeconomy issues. And there are no references here, but I also been editor-in-chief on a journal called Bio-Based and Applied Economics. And I've tried also to write a book about the economics of the bioeconomy. In terms of teaching, I have in my background quite a lot of courses in agriculture, food and environmental sciences, mostly economics and policy courses into degrees on these topics. And I have a couple experience of directly related to the bioeconomy. One is the European Bioeconomy University together with IRIS, and which is a network of 6 EU university trying to collaborate on the bioeconomy topic. And I'm teaching, among other things, in a master called Bioeconomy, which is an Italian master on circular bioeconomy. Next, please. So I've tried to draw from these experiences to put some point for discussion, and I try to formulate questions rather than conclusions, hoping that this can also help some discussion. So due partly to my combination of background, I'm quite often involved in thinking about skills in terms of teaching something related to economics or business to people with a background in biological science or biotech or similar. And very often when we see this list of skills, we come out with keywords like those which are in this slide that I've been also mentioned several times, I think, in the presentation at this workshop. Now, some comment about this process and also topics for potential questioning. Very often it seems from the approach that we just need to have just addition of soft skills to people with thematic skills. And in many cases, it is not very clear to what extent this is something typical of the bioeconomy. We have now this request from almost every course in technical, with technical curricula in our university. So maybe this is something of a very general need for our society, but also probably we should think if there is something specific in the way these things apply to the bioeconomy. Because, for example, of the connection with ethical issues or with people life or with basic needs. Do we need to go in the direction of systemic bioeconomy thinking, or rather to have a bioeconomy with some people with skills also in terms of business and similar things? And several times I've really struggled with understanding if bioeconomy is a subject itself for education. Because for the majority of the bioeconomy, of what is in the definition of the bioeconomy, we are still let's say, teaching or full courses where the bioeconomy is not even mentioned. If you take agriculture or food, they don't even feel they are in the bioeconomy. And the point, maybe the most important I would like to make is it a matter of teaching or learning skills, or is it a matter of encouraging a right self-selection of people with different attitudes we are used to? Very often we teach students in the class, okay, or if we go beyond classes, we want to have very good students to become lab operators. I don't know what is the exact wording. And then suddenly when you get to the PhD or after the PhD, you teach them that you would like them to be entrepreneurs, for example, which is something which is very much related to personal characteristic and is something that you cannot really teach at once late in the life of the person. It's more a way of thinking and a matter also of identify the right profile and the right motivation for students. Next. And about the how-to, of course, I mean, the two questions are not separable in a way, because when we think of what we want people to become, we have also to think at how it can be done. And of course, we are in a process where we need, on the one hand, adaptation to local needs, but also we need a lot of interaction with industry, stakeholders, and so on. And I'm also very much, I like the presentation of this project-based education. I'm in a project, an Age 2020 project called Next Food, that focuses quite a lot of new ways of education in the food system. And the focus is to a large extent action learning with students and practitioners. This may work. Some question that comes to me from this side of the coin is, yes, we are talking about tertiary education, but we need really to have a full view and possibly a full strategy of how education will go from the school children to people that is already quite advanced in their life. And one point I think we have to think in practical terms is to what extent the PhD level could be the steering or the pivotal activity. Because there you have really the opportunity to valorize skills and attitudes developed during a learning process and to make it into creative, original thinking in collaboration with industry. Of course, it's important that we collaborate across university, and I think there is really quite a lot to learn from clustering and networking and organizing what is there. But also we have probably to think to what extent we need something radically new. In some cases, I agree we should go for something completely different, but maybe this is not the recipe for everybody. In many cases, it could be the some upgrade of courses and some visioning behind, for example, regular agricultural courses is what is more needed and what is most feasible as well. And of course, I think digitalization was already mentioned. Besides digitalization, we are in a process of, very dramatic change in social structures and social innovation as a big topic. And especially when we want to link bioeconomy to development and to acceptability, I think this part should be really investigated and explored more in depth. Next one. Final comment, also for myself, when we start, I think we need to talk a lot about education. But very often when we start discussing about education, we tend to discuss it in isolation. I mean, okay, we need what industry needs and so on, but I think the big problem is to really see education in context, especially I think in the connection with research. That is probably something that needs to be done in a different way for bioeconomy topics, but also, of course, industry, market, policies, and societies as a whole. I understand when we talk with students that if we propose something that has a label bioeconomy in Italy today, very likely they would look at us and say, okay, you're saying this, but I don't see any job that has a bioeconomy as a label. What would I do if I follow this course? And on this question for myself, I would stop here and I will hope there will be a nice discussion about this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Davide, very much of raising first the question is what is bioeconomy education for a system changer? Is it just adding soft skills to technical skills? But I think you also showed or made one suggestion that the cooperative approach, working in the context with other stakeholders, is probably one of the ways that we could go here in bioeconomy education. Yeah, I'm looking again into the chat, and this time I'm waiting a little bit more time and see whether there are questions from the audience which we could discuss directly.
It is. We have two questions in the chat. Yes. The first one is directed to Davide, I think. It's from Ulrike Pogoda, and she writes, do you think that the recent state of social innovation is good or bad or needs improvement? She didn't really get your idea about social innovation in connection to bioeconomy education.
Yeah. Well, I'm not also sure I get 100% the question, but I will try to answer. I think there is in social science a strong attention to innovation related to social and institutional systems. I think we should be aware that the bioeconomy is not a change in technology only. It is also connected to potential changes in industrial organization and in the way society perceives themselves. For example, when we advocate consumers' behavior to buy new products because they are safer or they are good for the environment, we are actually moving in the direction of seeing that the roles of consumer and even what consumers are and social structure are should have a role different from what it has had until now. I didn't try to give a judgment of the current social structures because, of course, we can have a different opinion, but of course, there is a lot that can be improved, I guess, and it is changing anyway. What I don't think is that we can plan and design a future society in the same way we could think at this topic in 1 or 2 centuries ago. It's not a matter of identifying the right design of society, but it's something that is evolving and we can give a contribution, but we are basically navigating in what is happening. Maybe I can elaborate more because I understand that this could be something that brings to more discussions.
Yeah, we will have the chance to discuss later on.
Yeah.
Also still. I would just like to read out another question from Mauricio. Any suggestion for an undergraduate program in economics in terms of specific courses like biology or ecology, including laboratories and field work with communities?
Now, this is a difficult one. I think biology / ecology and I would say in general technology related to the bioeconomy would be good topics for courses in economics. I've been involved in some attempt of discussing this, and usually you get into a struggle with the motivation of the potential teachers. For example, I've been discussing with people specialized in genetics in my university, and they are very happy to teach what they do. It's very difficult in many cases to find the right person that is able to explain genetics and new genetic change techniques to economists. And maybe it's also different to find motivation. And that I think is a really a major challenge for the future, because something that, well, I'm going back also to one of the questions before. Most economists are really taught that there is economics and the technology or the processes they are talking about do not make much difference. So they could address what they do to industrial economics or to agriculture or to bioeconomy. For agricultural economists, this has always been a huge tension. So I'm really into this topic. I think one of the issues is to convince economists that technology matters also because it makes a difference for economic structures. But this is again something that we can elaborate further.
May I offer a response to this question as well?
Of course.
Okay, so Maurizio, I would take on this question very differently. I like the first part where you openly ask, and then we are usually retreating to the old labels of courses, right? Do they need to know something about biology and ecology? Of course they do, but the idea is if we want to go in new directions, we need to change the teaching. And that means we need to approach this very differently, not from a disciplinary background of biology or ecology, but as I suggested, really from a more project-oriented perspective. So what would happen if you take your undergraduate students in a particular course and you frame it completely differently? You say, okay, we're taking a real-world sustainability problem, you know, somewhat related to the bioeconomy. And what I'm trying to teach them in that course is really how to address that problem. So how to understand that problem from a systems perspective, right? Not just isolated in terms of, you know, what's wrong there in terms of ecological aspects, right? But really more systemically and looking into in how far economic aspects, psychological aspects, and how far a variety of different points come together that keep those problems in place. And then even more important, really work in particular with undergraduate students on solutions, which requires that they start learning about the future. We are so obsessed with the present and the past, right? How do you teach undergraduate students about the future? How do you enable them to be creative? You know, this futures thinking, but also how can their values, how can the SDGs inform our future thinking, right? So how can this problem be addressed from a strong futures perspective? And then, you know, finally, I like your ideas of, you know, laboratories and fieldwork, combining these things, right? But at the end of the day, it's really important what you write there about communities. Try to, you know, make sure that we at a university are not so distant to what is happening in the world. I mean, one of the major sustainability challenges worldwide is that we are distant from the issues, right? And so Iris mentioned at the beginning that we are teaching currently, you know, mostly online. And one of the challenges I see there is that we are even more getting away from what's the reality on the ground. So take your undergraduate students, try to identify a community or some real stakeholders who are interested in the topics that you want to address in this course, and try to craft some collaboration with them, right? Have check-in points with them, try to, you know, frame the whole thing that we are trying to work on solutions that actually matter to the world, as opposed to, you know, the very few elites or just the academics.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm also, I really, I'm really sitting here also absorbing all the ideas that are generated here now, because I think we are all involved in practical education in the bioeconomy. And I think this is a very, very valuable discussion. Thanks. I think, Sophie, the questions now from the chat have been all addressed so far.
They have been addressed. I think we can go on with the last presentation.
Okay, great. Before we go into the whiteboard discussion, we have another input, which comes from Dr. Petra Bieberhöfer. She works on the advancements of learning processes through transdisciplinary learning platforms at the interface of science and society, and she works at the ETH University of Zurich in Switzerland. And unfortunately, she cannot make it in person, so there will be no answer question possibility, but I think her input is very valuable to our discussion, which will follow. And she sent us a video, which I think, Jan, you will start now. Nine. It's not yet. Yes, now. Now we can see it.
A warm welcome from my side to Global Bioeconomy Summit 2020. For this workshop, two questions are at stake. First, what kind of knowledge and skills do system changers need? And the second one is how can and should these skills be acquired and integrated into specific curricula in tertiary education? So for me, these two questions need to be addressed in relation, as the discussion should not only be about knowledge and skills on an individual level, but has to tackle questions on how to shape education as a whole. So it's about systemic questions, about the opportunity structures when we think about key competencies of system changers. Why do I speak about competencies and not just knowledge and skills? Well, because competencies are a complex set of knowledge, capacities, skills, motives, and effective dispositions. They can be understood as specific attributes, individual need for action, and self-organization. They need to go much deeper than what we actually see at the surface and involve values, norms, motivations, elements which often remain implicit and not made explicit. However, competencies can't be taught, but have to be developed by the learner, him or herself. They can be acquired through action based on experience and reflection. So key competencies are not only about understanding content or acquiring more knowledge, but they are also about how to encourage engagement, how to promote different performances of system changers, actual abilities. So for sustainability performance, we need specific key competencies. And these competencies are built up in learning processes or opportunity structures. This means we have to design opportunity structures addressing different domains of learning: cognitive, emotional, somatic, and social domains. So I would like to zoom in into 3 crucial key competencies for system changers. First, normative competencies. These are abilities which help us to question our own values, permanently define and redefine sustainability values, and take them as an axis for decision. It's about deep reflection and awareness when we deal with sustainability dilemmas or emotions and our inner balance. Second, interpersonal and collaboration competencies. This is about the ability to create a culture of collaboration, dealing with complex realities and transformation processes. It's about working in multi-stakeholder networks, and it's about creating transdisciplinary communication skills. Third, disruptive competencies. This is the ability to break from hegemonic routines and vested powers and interests that are not serving the well-being of people and planet. It's about substantive forms of resistance or socially transformative, transgressive forms of social agency and human activity. This brings me to the second question at stake. How should learning environments be designed to tackle these key competencies? Or in other words, how can they be transformative? So as a first didactic principle, I would suggest that learning environments are ideally process-oriented and address different learning domains. So it's about learning with the head, with the heart, and with hands. Axiological learning opportunities tackle values and motivations. The attitude and skills of an educator are quite important when it comes to creating a learning environment which is responsive to these different learning domains. Educators become moderators and facilitators, able to cope with liminality and emotions, crucial elements of initiating transformative learning processes. Staging such safe enough spaces means to facilitate learning at the edge and deal with edge emotions, those unpleasant emotions that arise when our assumptions are being challenged. Such safe spaces also allow to build relationships and empathy independent of hierarchies. They give orientation and stability and at the same time provide space for reflection in the curricula. And they also reserve a culture or foster a culture of not knowing and being imperfect as an educator. Let me conclude with some challenges or necessary institutional adaptations in higher education to foster such learning environments. First, we need to better understand how to create support structures which allow institutionalization of such learning environments in terms of recognition and acknowledgement of respective competencies. Funding schemes are needed to engage and design such learning environments and increase their prestige. We need to find ways to keep curricula open to change and new assessment strategies, such as integrating actors from outside university. Last but not least, we need to promote capacity building trainings for educators so they get equipped with competencies on designing and staging safe enough spaces to tackle key competencies for system changers. I wish you a great discussion and a lovely workshop. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I would say thanks to Petra if she was here, but she is today not with us to answer questions. Therefore, Sophie, I would suggest that we are not discussing now via the chat anymore, but that we go ahead and move to the Miro discussion. Is that okay?
Yeah, if there are no questions or anything that we could discuss here now, I would also suggest that we go on with the fishbowl thing.
Yes. Then let's dive into the fishbowl. And if you look into your chat, then you see that Evelyn has invited you to a Miro board that you can click. And maybe, Evelyn, can you shortly describe what we are going to do next?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you all see my screen now with the Miro board?
Yes.
Super nice, because I have two screens. So okay, wonderful. So please follow the link in the chat. And we provided a virtual whiteboard for you, and we want to now tackle the questions of what kind of knowledge, skills do system changers need, and how can these skills be acquired and integrated in bioeconomy curricula. So for you, in order to be able to put down your thoughts, please just scroll with your mouse wheel, and hereby you can either zoom in or zoom out. And we would like you to ask you to use the yellow sticky notes to formulate your thoughts on skills, and the bluish sticky notes to formulate your thoughts on formats. And as soon as you have done that, please just draw them and move them here on the whiteboard. And you can also very easily, it works pretty similar to PowerPoint, enlarge and make them smaller again just as it suits you. So we will start now with a 10-minute working session, and I will be here and assist you if there should be any questions, as we are such a small group. So if you have any questions, please ask them right away. I think with we're now kind of like 17 people, that's pretty easy to manage. And yeah, so 10 minutes, it's like at around 2 to 3 minutes after 10 hour time, we will start with a discussion round on question 1, and then continue with a discussion round on question 2. Are there any additional information you want to provide? Maybe.
I think it is clear. I think you can read the questions that the 2 questions that are there, and I think that what we said is that now within the next 10 minutes, both questions will be addressed by the participants, or can be addressed however you feel or where you like to contribute. And we are looking forward to as many contributions as possible, because of course we will not be able to evaluate all of them now during this workshop, but this Miro board result will help us a lot to take the results of this workshop ahead and into the report that we will be writing after this workshop, and therefore we really look forward for any kind of contribution to this Miro board. And yeah, hopefully everybody can technically access this and it works for you. Yeah, otherwise I think if you have no questions, we would give you some minutes, some 10 minutes for thoughts and working on the Miro board.
Yes, and from our experience from the first workshop, I would kindly ask you if you provide your thoughts on what kind of knowledge and skills the system changers need. It would be really, really nice if you could elaborate it a little bit on the sticky notes, not just give us a simple like artificial intelligence or whatever you're thinking of, so we can go further in the discussion and yeah, build on that. That would be really kind. Thank you so much. But as I can see, there are already a lot of people on the board, and thoughts are coming in, and it looks very nice already. So in the end, I think we will get as a beautiful picture as we had on Monday. So it's kind of like a piece of art that's building up right now. So yeah.
So you have 10 minutes now. I would suggest we gather at 10 o'clock again, and then discuss some of the main findings from the board. So
yes,
now you have the time to, deep dive into your own thoughts and ideas. Thank you. All right. So Evelyn, would you close the board now?
Is everyone done? I think so far. Yeah.
We freeze it now so we can get the picture.
There's one comment from Gloria who wants to have one comment of hers included. I don't know if that can be done.
Yeah, I can do that. Just give me
You
a
saw
second,
that,
please.
okay.
Yeah,
Great.
of course. So Gloria, if you would like to add another comment, just go to the sticky note section, and as soon as you're done, I will smoothly move your sticky note completed then into the onto the whiteboard, but then Sophie can go on with the discussion. Is that okay?
Just got kicked out of the board, but
I think the board is now closed.
But you should be able to come back, Sophie.
yeah, I am in again.
Okay, super.
Okay, so could we manage to include Gloria's comment?
I'm already doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for all these contributions. Although we're so few people this time in our workshop, we got lots of ideas and comments, and we just have, let's say, 15 minutes to discuss those or some of the notes now. And maybe I would like to ask you to, if we read out one of your comments that you actually wrote yourself, you're welcome to unmute yourself and just speak up, because we're so few people. I think we can have an open discussion and do not need to, you know, have it translated or read by me or by someone else. So just unmute yourself on the in the left down corner on your screen. You can mute and unmute yourself. And when you want to speak up, just unmute. And afterwards, I would like to ask everyone to mute him or herself again, because then we don't have so many noises. So thank you very much. We will now go through the notes, or some of the notes from like divided into these two questions. First, I would like to start with the question, what kind of knowledge or skills, or as we heard, competencies do system changers need actually, especially in the case of the bioeconomy. And what sprang to my mind first is, let me go to the presentation mode. Is this actually, this comment caught my attention because I would like to ask the person who wrote this, what kind of skills you think of when you think of skills to facilitate change processes, because I think this is really what we need if we want to establish a sustainable circular bioeconomy, but it's sometimes not so easy to know what kind of skills we really need to, you know, trigger those processes politically and socially. So anyone willing to expand on this card? No one.
So here is Ricardo speaking. Good morning, everyone. I actually wrote down this idea in the note, and with this I mean change processes at different levels. So just as an example, if I refer to business practices, for me, it's important actually that bioeconomists or that professionals in the area of bioeconomy learn how to shape changes in business models and in current business practices. And this requires specific skills in able to facilitate such changes at organizational level, but we could also refer to different processes at societal level. So how to trigger change at a community level. So how to catalyze, or to say, these processes between people who could have an interest in bioeconomy, but that probably don't know how to organize themselves. So this is what I mean with this change processes, but of course you can also apply that to other to higher levels, so to political levels and so on. So this is what I mean with this, with the skills to facilitate such change processes.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. So you're referring to different levels of change, actually, and as we heard, they are connected to each other, right? If you want to change something in the system, you need to start by yourself usually. Thank you very much. The other thing I would like to talk about, or would like to learn more about, is this card here, multidimensional profiles. In terms of skills and technical capacities identified by the industrial sector, were identified by this Bio Future project. Is anyone willing to tell us more about this project and these outcomes concerning multidimensional profiles, which I cannot really identify myself? Maybe someone is willing to tell us more about this?
I can talk about that. I was part of this project, and I think I also knows a bit, about that. But in fact, there is a lot of documentation related with this in formats that are very easy to get into it. Webinars and presentations, reports that are in the webpage of this Your Biofuture project that just finished. Finished just at the beginning of the pandemic. And the fact is that in those interviews and on those surveys that we perform, the common sense and the common demand from the industrial sector and other stakeholders that are configuring bioeconomy was they always wanted to have, for example, people knowing about regulation, but with background in technical aspects and with a lot of capacity of convincing the public administration. This kind of things, Or business people, of course, having a lot of background in technical issues. Of course, it was very, very common, but also being able to empathize with the society, with the sustainability, and with the consumer demand. It's just two examples, People also being able to technical people, researchers that were able to talk between them, coming from different areas of the life science, chemistry with biotech, biotech with chemistry, or of course with other areas in general of knowledge, like for example, economics. The fact is the demand is there, we were here in the what is needed in regarding the people and the stakeholders in general that are, really needed an evolution of bioeconomy, of bio-based economy. In this sense, it was the area of cover was Europe, but I think it could be interesting to take it into account. I don't know if you want something else. I really invite you to visit the webpage, because as I mentioned, there are a lot of things there that are easy to really, short time to dedicate to it, and then you get quite a lot of insight.
Thank you very much, Gloria. I think that's a very relevant project. Could you just quickly point out, you wrote down, it was identified by industrial sector, and then you say, and other kinds of stakeholders. What kind of stakeholders were included there?
Well, universities, research centers, also in some cases, but less represented, I might say, but also consumers associations. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
Just to make sure that it's not only the industrial perspective, but also the societal stakeholders were asked. Okay, maybe one more on this question. What I actually liked very much, what Davide just pointed out, this question on what is specific to bioeconomy thinking, because I think it's quite relevant. We're always saying, yeah, we need systemic thinking, we need to think in complex terms. But what we haven't asked ourselves so much, maybe so far, is what really are the specifics of a bioeconomy, of a sustainable circular bioeconomy. So Davide, maybe you would like to say a little bit whether you found an answer to this question already, or you have any hints on it, what was meant by specificities of bioeconomy thinking?
Not really, but I didn't put that on, so I would be curious to learn who and why.
Well, actually, David, it was myself.
Okay.
That because I just caught this question from your presentation, and I thought it would be worth discussing this maybe in the whole participant group.
Yeah, I actually clearly tried to escape the question as well. But yeah, no, I think there are some features related to the time and processes related to life. And ecological cycles and ecological processes, and also the time horizon we are thinking about, which are somehow different from most of the other fields of industry. And also the point that in the end we are, I mean, the bioeconomy is connected also in physiological terms with human life. I think this brings to quite a lot of specificities that I don't have organized in my mind, but I think should be somehow discussed and grow up in our vision of what we do. There are also concepts related to value, for example, in the literature on value, which tend to identify specific categories of values related to life in relation to the bioeconomy. I don't have a straight answer, but I think the combination of these things could actually be used in say we should reflect on that side to have more of a culture of the bioeconomy itself and not just another field with a different name.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Davide. I think it's something we should think about in the future. I just want to close this question and go on with the second question on how these skills can be acquired and integrated in bioeconomy curricula that exist already or that may be developed in the future. And here I got this one kind of cluster of things, I would say, where we have these this local thing or local part of the bioeconomy that we really need learning environments that are adapted to local conditions, that we have to create participatory spaces with local actors and really work on a project basis rather than on a classroom basis. Anyone wants to elaborate on that or has any more ideas on this specific cluster here, on the local conditions, or maybe even some experiences already from teaching project-based or in local contexts? I'd be happy to hear anything.
I think, Sophie, this contribution also may have come from Armin Weg, and he unfortunately had to leave, so he will not be able to further contribute on that.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't have anyone among the participants who has experience in project-based bioeconomy learning environments. If we do, then please speak up now. That'd be great. Otherwise, we will move on. Davide?
Well, I can try. I mean, we experience sort of laboratories with students of technical economic curricula and agricultural science, where basically we help them learning about business by requiring the development of the project on an idea of that they will choose, and many choose actually things that are related to innovative things in the bioeconomic, like new byproducts or similar topics. I think for students that's something very interesting. But unless we have a very good connection with companies, we often end up with solutions that will never work. So I think we should distinguish somehow using this as a learning approach, motivating people. For example, nobody of the students would ever listen to a course about biorefineries, but once they have a project connected, they would investigate themselves the technical side of the topic.
Yeah.
But that's different from actually confronting with real life in the proper sense. In some cases, what we are doing is to try to have these processes go ahead through stages in companies where the things can be further discussion in an industrial environment, and that would be, I think, that would be an area much more very much complementary and more interesting than just again in the classroom, because actually, in many cases, these ideas are very nice, but end up with, again, classroom work backed by a lot of digital quick knowledge of things where people do not have really the background to discriminate and to understand what they are doing. Well, it's a bit too extreme, but there's a risk and something we have to cope with, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, David. I think that's a big problem which came up several times now also, that we as teachers are not really trained to do these kind of different teaching, right? I think that's a big problem as well. And also the institutional surroundings usually do not support us to, you know, do this kind of innovative teaching that we would love to do sometimes. Okay.
Also because, of course, it's much more expensive in terms of time and effort from our side.
Exactly. And we have to do research as well. And we have to, you know, run the chairs and so on. We all know that, but no excuses.
No, sure.
Thank you very much. I would like to hand over to Iris. I think we have to come to the wrap up now because time is running. But from my side, thank you very, very much. I think that was a lively discussion, and we got many new ideas and innovative, creative ideas. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Okay, then I would also just have a short wrap up of this workshop. I think the discussions were very lively. I especially thank a lot those that gave the inputs that motivated our discussion. And I'm afraid only Davide is still there. Armin had to leave. I think his input was very helpful, but Davide, thanks a lot for your input and also for sharing the ideas. I think we all learned during this workshop a lot about not only what the questions are and how to what the skills should be for system changer, but I think we also can take home some ideas of how system changer education could work. And that's at least from my side, I enjoyed this a lot, and I really take home some important ideas, and probably can also apply this in my education. But this this is hopefully also an effect that we have of this workshop. As said in the beginning, we will of course work with the results as well from the inputs, but also from the Miro board, of course. And so they are not, so to say, a one-day flight and end with this workshop, but we will take these results. And the idea is to write, or we will write a report on this, but also hopefully on opinion paper, which can reach a broader audience that can then also participate, not participate, but benefit from our discussions and the results that we have had in this workshop. And I don't know if there's still the idea of having a kind of past workshop that will take place to work a little bit more on this on the results, which will take place on Friday. Is that still in the planning? So because yesterday's workshop unfortunately went technically so wrong, we thought we may recap also the results from that workshop as far as possible and bring it together with these, and there will be some announcement via the GBS that we will have another hour of working on the results and bringing them ahead, so we can work on an opinion paper from that. Okay, then I thank all the participants also for their participation and their input. And yeah, I hope we keep in contact and in discussion about how to shape a good bioeconomy education. Okay, I see that there is still a comment from Ricardo. Ricardo, do you want, is this just an information, or do you want to say something? Yeah, we had a speaker on Monday, Alejandro. Yeah, and okay, I don't know if Ricardo, is that something that we have to say now, but we can also talk about this offline. Okay, thanks everybody, and hope to see the organizers of this workshop back in 5 minutes for our next discussion round. Have a good day, everybody.